Welcome to the One More Thing podcast. I'm Dr. Troy Doucet, and I'm joined today with Dr. Larry Baucom. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, this is a paradox.
That's right.
So, good to see you.
You too, man. So, yesterday's sermon, man, it was a great weekend, but I think yesterday's sermon was one that really was absolutely relatable to everyone, in that we all struggle with a type of anger that begins to sort of stew inside of us for whatever particular reason it may be. And your point was to stop it from manifesting in terms of harming others or harming ourselves. And I think your story of just like taking that bike of that kid who cut out in front of you while you were going to get pizza and chunking it, but it left a scar on your car. Kind of give us a brief synopsis of
Yeah,
that.
that's an embarrassing story.
You didn't want to tell it.
No, I didn't. It happened when I was in my 20s, but it was a learning experience for me. It's one of those to where a kid cuts you off. I really was concerned because I almost ran over somebody. And the fear of that, I wanted this kid to get off the road, and I was treated rudely, and maybe the confrontation style I was using was not my best interest, but I was really trying to be kind. But when you're talking to little middle schoolers and you're an adult, I was 28 or whatever, 27, right. And just the language, just F you. And It's like, what? I'm here. I almost killed you, and I'm trying to help you, and you're blasting me. So in that moment, to throw the bike in the ditch was probably not my best moment in my life. But to get the other kid threw a rock and hit my car.
Yeah.
And I didn't get the detail, but you can drive a 4-speed pretty quick. It was a 5-speed. Man, I was zipping around trying to catch that kid on that bike. I don't know what I did if I'd caught him. Probably
Right.
The best thing that happened is I never caught him.
That's right.
But he hit my car and made a dent right above the windshield on the roof. And these kind of cars, it's not a tall car, very low profile, so you could see that all the time. And I never had it repaired. I think it was on there. I had the car a long time. It was something that caused me to have the car repaired. I think at some point some kid or somebody damaged my car. They ruined the hood, and they ran over my car. I mean, to where the hood was damaged, the roof was damaged, the trunk was damaged. It's almost like somebody drove over my car.
Right.
And it may have, whatever it was, but the insurance company paid for it, and they fixed that. But that was 6 years later.
Yeah.
So I had it for 5 or 6 years
With that dent,
and I refused to have it fixed. But the interesting thing is, after a teaching like that, how many people came to me and said, "You're reading my mail.
Yeah.
I was mad today," or "My husband and I had a fight this morning," or "I'm so angry all the time," or "I need to control my anger." One guy came to me and said, "I have a dent in the side of my car that I refused to have it fixed for exactly the same reason. I was an idiot, and this happened, and I'm just not going to fix it."
Yeah. And I think that's what was powerful about the story was, while you had some sort of a car that had a dent that served as a reminder, I think what resonated with me and with a lot of people I spoke with was most of us have a lot of scars that are emotional, psychological, even physical, from our own inability to control that anger from having an outward expression. I want to read you something.
Let me finish.
No, go ahead. No, yeah, go for it.
The last thing I wish I'd done as a closing story,
Yeah.
after telling that story at the beginning, is at the end saying, "Hey, thanks for coming today. And if you rode here today on a bicycle, don't pull in front of me on your way out."
That's right. Stay in your lane.
Anyway, now you go ahead with what you're saying.
No, yeah. And I like the way you alluded to Jesus, because a lot of people try to justify their anger by saying, well, look what Jesus did.
Yeah.
Like he went into the temple and flipped tables. He grabbed whips, according to the narrative, and was literally whipping people out, and they try to justify that.
Yeah.
Do you think there's ever a moment, however, that allows us to justify a type of righteous anger? Because I want to read you something from Richard Rohr. He says, "Anger sometimes can actually be an expression of compassion, a willingness to uphold boundaries that are sacred, or to stand up for someone who's being oppressed." Like, when would you feel, being a pastor for 40 years and knowing the scriptures and how to interpret these ideas hermeneutically, like, when are we justified in our anger coming from within towards a without?
Well, I think if we say we don't have anger, we miss the as Jordan Peterson would say, or Carl Jung, the shadow self. It's part of the shadow side of all of us, and it's not necessarily our best side, but it's a necessary side. And I think that if we see some of the social atrocities that have happened, I don't know anyone that should feel good about 6 million people dying of genocide, during the World War II, or to see a kid that's been sexually abused at 1 or 2 or 3 years old. And I have a story along those lines that it's nauseating. And did that guy go to jail? He went to jail, and he should. What does it make me angry? It absolutely makes me angry. But my anger should not be because someone has affronted my ego or because I had my feelings hurt, where it's all about me. But there should be something when someone does something horrible to someone, especially children. I mean, one place in the narrative it says it's better for a millstone to be tied around their neck and thrown into the sea. You should not harm these innocent ones.
Right.
And I think that's a much better way. That's a righteous anger, and we should feel it.
Yeah.
Now, how we express it,
Yeah.
I think is totally, it has to be a controlled response.
Right.
You just can't go blindly out and, it's like the guy said, I hate violence. I hate violent people. I want to kill every one of them.
Yeah.
That's a problem. It's
Right.
just, you just can't respond in a way that denigrates someone else because you're angry about this that happens.
That's
so
right.
I think it's back to salt and light. It's balance.
Yeah.
The yin and yang of life.
And there's always this blame game. You do a great job in your teachings to pull that in on occasion because we're so prone to playing the blame game. But one of the things you touched on in the sermon was a lot of the origin of our own sense of anger and that manifestation of it in a very unhealthy way begins with our speech.
Yeah.
Begins with what we say or how things are said to us. And the Bible, if we use that as sort of a grounding text, has a lot to say about the way in which speech reveals who we are, right? Speech tends to reveal what's inside. What does Jesus say? Something like, from the heart is what the mouth will say.
Right.
But I often find myself saying things a few minutes later I regret. Like what would be some points you could give, like to say, how do we round up that thought before it comes out in speech?
Well, I think taking a pause before an instant response. Someone says, what do you think about that? Well, let me think about it. How about this? Well, let me give that some thought. Or can I answer you a little bit later?
Yeah.
I think sometimes we should not necessarily respond when we're emotionally hot. I mean, the word, there was a counselor who left. She doesn't live here. She lives in Ocala, but she was in church yesterday. She's a former Suncoaster, but she comes back to visit her dad. And she said, the word anger is only one letter different from danger. Mm-hmm. And anger and danger are close, but when we say words that, we can rip people apart with our words. Mm-hmm. And that's not and during times of anger, and you say things that you can't take back, and sometimes you mentioned scars. People have scars from wounds that maybe their father gave them or their mother gave them or an ex-spouse or someone just ripped, they rip you apart. And you want to get over that, but those words still, wouldn't it have been better if they just used less words or maybe just nodded and didn't say anything at all?
Yeah. Yeah. It seems like we have all these new sort of cultural phenomenons that I don't think my parents or even my grandparents dealt with. Things like road rage or like this heightened sense of being offended by certain things that are said that cause this visceral reaction. And as people who want to try and follow and emulate Jesus as much as possible, like what are some ways to not to necessarily avoid confrontation or conflict, but what are some ways which we can, if we're offended, if someone's offended us and their words have hurt, and we know on this side of our ego, like retaliation and just getting back at someone is so satisfying in that immediate moment. Like, what are some principles maybe we can apply to say, this is going to feel good for a brief moment to get back that myth of redemptive violence, but here's what the better side is, especially when we have been offended in a real way.
No, and I start before I give the answer. It seems like that people who are close to us, it's easier to mend that, but it's also easier to get hurt. Mm-hmm. But where it gets a little more caustic, for example, road rage, you see the guy that's raging you on the road pulls in the parking space across the way, and he'll open the door for you as you go into the store you're going or the restaurant.
Right.
Very kind to you in person, but he gets behind the car. There's a wall there, a step removed from a personal thing. And then you go to the social media aspect.
Yeah.
And I mean, vicious on social media, particularly middle school girls are just vicious with one another, so caustic, so hurtful with their words. So what do? Well, there's many things, but one is for middle schoolers, limit social media.
Yeah.
And even for adults, I say limit social media. My son talked me into getting rid of my Facebook account over 2 years ago. I haven't missed it. I mean, I think Facebook is a great medium, and I think we connect with a lot of classroom friends, and it has its place. But when it becomes toxic to you, you need to say, well, I can get rid of that.
Yeah.
But how do I make amends? I think one of the ways is to be honest with people. Say, hey, can we talk for a minute? You know, I don't know if you meant this or not. This is the way I took it. You know, you said this and it hurt me. And people often do not want to hurt you. Now, I have the opposite happen to me once in a while. Is people say, hey, you know what I said the other day when I was leaving and I said this to you, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean if I hurt you. I go, and I'm going, okay, brain, when was this? Who said it? What? I said, usually I say, what'd you say? And because I'm fairly thick-skinned.
Yeah.
But as a pastor, you have to be a little thick-skinned.
That's right.
But other people are not nearly as thick-skinned, and we can offend them. And when we do, I think an apology is so appropriate to say, I'm sorry. And like I said toward the end, I'm sorry, but I was in a bad mood. Or, I'm sorry, but you provoked me. I'm sorry, but, the kids were driving me crazy. I'm sorry, but I didn't get enough sleep. I'm sorry, but, and, the big joke. And this is an original phrase. When you say, I'm sorry, but, then you are just a sorry, but.
That's right.
And and I think it's true.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, period.
That's it.
And, well, was I wrong? Maybe I was right, but I'm sorry I hurt your feelings. I didn't mean to. But I didn't mean to. I'm sorry. I did not mean to hurt your feelings. That was not my intent. Please forgive me. And mean it.
Yeah.
And there have been so many times in my life where I've said this, not just to others, but to my wife. If I had this to say over again, I would not say it. Number one. Number two, I will work to never say anything like that again.
Yeah.
Because it's so easy to be misunderstood, or to belittle or people feel belittled, even when you don't mean it.
Yeah.
Particularly when you're a PhD.
Yeah.
You come across, I talked to my mother and she says, well, you act like I don't know anything. In my mind, I'm going, yeah, that's the way I feel. But I don't say that.
That's right.
And I have to say, no, Mom, you're important to me. I love you. I feel like you bring value, and try to affirm, bring that affirmation in. And some of that comes with wisdom and maturity and realizing after so many mistakes that we make in life, we just don't have to keep making the same mistakes.
Yeah.
So for me, it's take a break. For me, it's breathe in. Smile. Or I used to say, breathe in, and as I breathe out, say, the Lord is my shepherd, under my breath. And sometimes it takes 5 or 6 of those.
Yeah.
Because it diffuses anger, and it helps us to be more clear-minded. And I don't think we ever respond at our best when our emotions are high and we're frustrated about something, and we get a little more callous, and our speech gets a little more harsh.
Yeah.
Be careful what you say.
And that's good wisdom, because there's so many benefits to not respond so angrily or aggressively. You had said something yesterday in the sermon. It's almost like you're lighting yourself on fire in hopes that the smoke bothers the person who's offended you. And that's just sort of a contradictory type of way to approach it, man. So,
but anyway, it was a great opportunity to speak this weekend. I loved it, and I know you and Brett are going to be up this week. I'm excited about what you guys have to say. So it's a great place to be. It's a great community.
It's awesome. Thanks.
No problem.